What was the first Roman gladius? When one thinks of the first Roman gladius, one imagines the Gladius Hispaniensis. However, the sword was first used around the time of the late 2nd century BCE to the 1st century BCE, mainly around the time of the Marian Reform. So what sword did the Romans use before the Gladius Hispaniensis? Well, that would be the Gladius Delos, first used by the Roman military in the 3rd to 1st century BCE. However, the sword would even be used into the 1st century AD, mainly by the Roman cavalry and Roman centurions. Now, people are going to ask, why was it used longer by these units and not the regular Roman military? Well, that it can easily be answered. One, the Roman cavalry preferred the longer reach of the sword, so this is the reason why. However, for the Roman centurion, on the other hand, these were the grizzled veterans of the Roman military. And since a Roman centurion was a veteran of the former conflicts, you can pretty much understand why. In fact, it'd be kind of identical to the grizzled veterans of our past, such as your grandfather who stormed the beaches of Normandy, or who in which fought at the Chosin War during the Korean War, or even your grizzled grandpa that actually served in the Vietnam War prior before the M16. They prefer the old-style wooden M1 Garand or even the M14 compared to the modern-day firearms of combat units. So, yeah, there's a major reason why. And such though these swords that were used by the Roman military units had actually seen battles of the Pyrrhic, Macedonian, and even the Punic Wars. As both Roman and Greek historians describe these swords, mainly the Greek historian Polybius and the Roman historian Livy, as Livy states that the sword could skewer through 1 to 3 men, and stating the sword would fall from the legionnaires' grip due to the weight of the enemy, while the Roman troops behind the front rank would have their swords pointed down to finish off the dying enemy on the ground. In which, as you see me here, I am actually showing exactly what this would entail. Well, the first description that Polybius gives us actually described of long, wide, bladed weapons that stuck out from the shield formations, stating that the front rank held the shield formation, while the second file would use a long spear. However, he would later change this in his second account, describing of his view of the sword, in which I could see why, seeing the fact that the blade is somewhere between 60 and 65 centimeters of blade length. And as you see me here, we can see why Polybius and as well Livy both describe these swords in their way. The sword would point out. This is why in later centuries the Romans switched to the Roman Gladius Hispaniensis, as we can see. And in fact, I could stab my opponent on the ground without any need of actually bending down. And I'm pretty much going to hear a lot of people asking, why did the Roman military change from the Delos to the Gladius Hispaniensis? Well, this can easily be answered, as these swords were heavier and longer than the Gladius Hispaniensis, of which was not a good choice for close quarters fighting. While the Gladius Hispaniensis was lighter and shorter, which was perfect for close quarters fighting. As well, another reason was of cost and time manufacturing, for with every Gladius Delos that was made, one could make 4 of the Gladius Hispaniensis for the same price and time. And I hear many people already asking, why don't we actually know that much about the Gladius Delos? Well, this is sadly due to mostly movies, games, and as well TV series, as well as modern day artwork, which unfortunately does actually, well, make people think, oh yeah, the Gladius Hispaniensis was the only sword the Romans used. However, from misread texts, many people think the word gladius is a type of sword. However, in translation, the word gladius just means sword, and such a word would be used even into the 3rd and 4th century, describing the Roman spatha. So, yeah, I know many people don't realize this, but unfortunately a lot of artwork, especially modern day artwork, kind of, well, makes people think, oh yeah, the Romans, they all use the Gladius Hispaniensis. Not exactly. In fact, the Romans don't exactly use this sword until after the Punic Wars. They only start using it during the time of the Cimbrian Wars, but very few legions. Mostly Roman legions that were stationed in Iberia. However, many people do want to know, though, where did the Romans copy this sword from? Well, simple. This sword was actually nicknamed by the Romans as the Gladius Delos, the sword of the Gauls. Seems as a fact, it was actually copied from the Gauls in the north. However, many historians believe that this sword might have actually been copied from the Gauls after the sacking of Rome and the defeat at the Battle of Allia. It's hard to say whether or not that one is true or not, but we can understand how the Romans copied this. The Romans copied it in such a way that it mirrored the Celtic style swords almost perfectly, both in blade width and length. However, this sword would still be used into the time of the 2nd century, but it was probably more of a ceremonial sword by this time. And in fact, we could probably understand why the Romans stopped using it, as one, especially in the close quarters fighting, such as the battle or as well the massacre of Cannae, I can actually see why the Romans would stop using it. But what do you think? Do you like this sword, or do you prefer the Gladius Hispaniensis? Me myself, I kinda like this sword a lot, but because of the weight, it was a problem. But I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. If you want to know where to get one of these, I will leave it down in the description, so that way you can find these for yourselves. Anyways guys, I'm the Celtic Templar. Hope to see you all in the next one. Like and subscribe for more, and if you all have any type of Roman equipment that you want me to talk about, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be happy to get to it very soon. Have a great day.